Hey, welcome to Vance Tried It. We have a lot going on here today because we're actually going to be making two pies. So we're going to be making a eggnog pie, and that's going to be with a homemade pecan crust. And then we're also going to make a cheater's pie. Now, what is a cheater's pie? Well, look, we are fast approaching on the holiday season. First comes Thanksgiving. And if y'all's family is anything like my family, you get together for that big family gathering, and it's bad enough when you're trying to abide by some diet and maybe you're on the keto diet, or you're on a low sugar diet, or you're on Atkins diet, or whatever you're on, and you have all that good food and the aromas coming in. You're like, oh, look at all that stuff I can't have. And then you get to the dessert table. Oh my goodness. Well, maybe you have a super strong iron will and you make it through Thanksgiving, but then right around the corner is the Christmas season, and you have all the Christmas parties and the potlucks that are going on. And then maybe you have 2 or 3 different family Christmases, and every time there's that dessert table. And look, for most of us, let's face it, this is a fast approaching the time of year. We know we're going to cheat a little bit on our diet and our diet restrictions. So, that being said, the second pie we're going to make, the cheater's pie, I'm not telling you that it is diabetic. I'm not telling you that it is Atkins, it's keto, that it's Berta, that it's vegan, that it's carnivore. I'm not telling you it fits into any diet plan you might be doing. But what I will tell you is this is probably a pie that is going to be less off of your diet than the rest of the stuff sitting on the table. So if you're going to cheat with this pie we're going to make today. But first, we're going to get started on a homemade pecan crust. And so what I have done is I have taken 2.5 cups of pecans, crushed pecans. I just crushed them up in my Ninja food processor. To this I added 1/2 cup of sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and I have mixed those all up really well together. And then I have here 1/2 cup of butter, and we're just going to pour that butter in there just like that. And then I'm going to get my handy dandy glove, and I'm just going to mix this up really well, just by hand, until it is all nice and mixed together. And you should start to notice it sticking together. So you can see it sticking together. It's not going to take long because we really crushed these pecans up really well. And then you have the sugar in there and you have all the other stuff in there. And it feels like I have a piece of paper from the butter wrapper. We'll get rid of that. That's one of the nice things about doing this by hand. You can see kind of any of that silly stuff you might get in there. You definitely don't want to bake that into the pie crust. Somebody would get a surprise. And you can always just play it off like that. You meant to do it, and you win $1 or whatever you want to give them. But so that's all we're going to do. And so as you can see, it's sticking together pretty well. And then I have a pie pan here, and I have coated it with just a little bit of butter. And I'm going to now start to put this nut mixture in here. We're just going to be spreading it down, spreading it around. You just want a good covering on here, and then you want to work it up the sides, just like this. You don't want it too thick, but then again, you don't want it too thin. So you just need probably about a good 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch all around here. And you might push it a little bit too much in one spot and you start to see the pie pan underneath there. And then you just move it around a little bit. And look, we're not going to use all of this mixture in here. And that's really what we want, okay? Because if you're using it all, either you got really lucky or you're just really good. But more likely, somewhere you are skimping on the width of this pie crust. And we don't want to do that, so we're not afraid that we're going to have a little bit left over here. And we're not going to feel like we need to use all of it. We're just going to get a nice coating in there. We're going to look for any spots where we think it might be a little bit too low. Just like this. And look, you can see that beautiful pie crust right there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have to bake this, but before we bake it, we're going to put it in the refrigerator to chill. So I'm going to go put this in the refrigerator, and then we'll get back to you, and we will start on our second pie, actually, while we're letting this chill out. Okay, so for our Cheaters pie, we're going to be using a pre-made pie crust, and this is just Diamond brand pecan pie crust, and we're going to be using this for a couple reasons. Well, first off, we've seen, why would we make our own crust? Well, for one thing, it's going to have the flavor we want. For another thing, we're able to control everything that goes into it. And with that being said, there are some reasons why you might want to use a pre-made crust. Because as easy as it is to make the pie crust, it is a little bit time consuming, and it's way easier just to buy this and open it up and put your filling in there. And so that's what we're going to be doing. But there's a second reason. And remember I said this is a Cheaters pie. And so this pie crust is going to be lower in carbs by about a third versus the homemade pie crust. So we're going to use this so we can cheat a little bit more. But we're just going to set that off to the side for now, and we're going to get started on our filling for this pie. We're going to turn our stovetop on to medium low, and we're going to start off by putting a half a cup, that's 1 stick of butter. Please, friends, use butter. Don't use margarine. Margarine is bad for you, please. Don't use it. Now, that's my warning for today. Just look. Here's the reality. Forget all the stuff that they've been saying for years because they flip-flop on everything. Here's the one thing that just stays constant that you can remember. The more natural it is, the better it is for you. So therefore, butter, which is more natural than margarine, is way better for you. So go ahead and use real butter on pretty much everything you make. So we are letting this butter melt down, just like this. And I use softened butter here because I usually will use, anytime I'm going to use butter, unless it really asks for cold butter, which some recipes do want you to use cold butter. But for the most part, if it's asking for butter, I'm going to use a softened butter, even if I'm melting it, because it's just going to melt better. And I pretty much always keep butter out on the counter. Butter is fine to set on the counter for at least a couple weeks. And so just keep it in an airtight container. and you're good to go. And so we have our butter all melted up. And so to this butter, we're going to add, this is a half a cup of monk. And what's it called? Let me look at it. It's monk fruit sweetener. So this is one of the sugar substitutes you can use. And so we're going to throw in some monk fruit sweetener. Just like this. We're going to let that start to dissolve down into that butter. Goes pretty fast, kind of just like sugar. And it's the same texture as sugar. And it's probably a little less sweet than sugar, but it's definitely a good sweetener. And to that, I have some lemon zest. This is the lemon zest off of 5 lemons. So maybe a quarter of a cup, maybe a little less. We're just going to put that in there. That's going to give it a lot of really good lemon flavor. I'm just going to continue to let that go. Just like this. You're going to notice it's going to get a little bit syrupy. That's exactly what we want, as that sweetener really dissolves into our butter. And now we have a half a cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice. Now, I'll be honest with you. The lemons I used were not as juicy as I'd like them to be, and sometimes that happens. And so that is mostly fresh squeezed, but I did top it off with some lemon juice from concentrate that I keep in the refrigerator. And I always just keep that in there because that's really when you're dealing with fresh juice or something like that, and you know you need a certain amount of juice. Well, one of the issues is sometimes you just don't get as much juice out of it as you think you're going to. And so if you keep a bottle of the juice from concentrate in your refrigerator, you can always add that. Is it going to be as good as if it was 100% fresh squeezed lemon juice? Maybe not, but it's going to be close. So just go ahead and do that. So we've got that all dissolved. And now what we have here are 6 egg yolks. So we put 6 egg yolks in here. And really what we're making is a lemon custard. So we're just going to whisk these up right in the pan just like this. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to cook this until it just begins to solidify a little bit. Not completely, but we're wanting to start to stiffen up, we'll call it. And so we're just going to leave it in here. We're going to keep whisking it just like this. And I'll get back to you when this has stiffened up the way I want it. And then we will move on to the next step. Okay, so our lemon curd is starting to stiffen up just the way we want it. Now, it's really important that you keep stirring this really constantly, otherwise you're going to get chunks in here. And in fact, what we're going to do, because you really can't help but to get some solids in here when you're doing this, we're not going to take, and we're going to strain this off into a bowl over here. I'm going to run this through our little strainer here. Grab a spatula. I mean, you can smell the lemony goodness right here in this curd. It smells very good. Put this over here. And then I'm just going to kind of stir this around in our strainer until we get it all down in there. So it's not a big deal to strain this out. You just got to work at it a little bit. And I'm not really trying to push the lemon curd down through there. I'm really just trying to stir it. So instead of pushing it, I'm encouraging it to go down there. Because if you start to push it down through there, like really aggressively, then some of those solids you're going to get in there are going to get into your lemon curd, and you really don't want that. So you might say, Vance, what are the solids you're going to have down in there? Well, look, whenever you're separating eggs, you can get egg whites without any yolk in them. You cannot get egg yolks without any egg white in them. And so the egg yolk is going to combine really well in here and do really good. But the egg whites are actually going to start to cook up, and you're going to have cooked eggs in your curd. So what you have to do then is you have to strain this out so you can get all those cooked up egg whites out of there. So we're going to just go ahead and rinse that off. And we're going to be ready right now to put this in the refrigerator because we're going to let this set up. And then for our next step, we're actually going to need to get out our mixer. So I'm going to set up the mixer, get this cooling, and get ready for the next step. So I'll see you here in just a few minutes. Okay, our next step in this cheater's pie is we're going to be making our own whipped cream. And so we have here 1.5 cup of heavy whipping cream. We're going to put that into our mixing bowl. And to that, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of xanthan gum and then a tablespoon of our monk fruit sweetener. And we're actually going to go ahead and get this going here. And as that's going, we're just going to put this in here. Now that xanthan gum is really a binder. And so what it's going to do is it's going to make this really hold together really well, because our monk fruit sweetener, not being sugar, normally sugar would kind of let it all hold together, but the monk fruit sweetener isn't going to have the same characteristics, so we need to put some xanthan gum in there to do that. And we're just going to turn this up, and we're just going to whip this until it gets peaks. And so we're just going to slowly start to turn up the speed on it. So I can already see it starting to stiffen up, but it's not quite there. But let's turn it off real quick and see kind of where we are. You can see it's almost there. Almost. It doesn't quite have the peaks we want. We want it to get pretty stiff so that when we lift up our beater or our whip, that it kind of starts to form like a peak, like a mountain, where it's trying to stay together. So let's give it another look. Just like that. So what we have, it was just that simple. We now have some homemade whipped cream. We're going to just get as much off of it as we can. Let's just give it a taste. Tastes like Homemade whipped cream, what it tastes like. Okay, so we're going to take that off of there. We're going to take our pie crust and open it up. Just like this. And we're now going to get our lemon curd out of here. And we're going to get about a third of this whipping cream. And we're going to fold this into our slightly chilled lemon curd. We're not trying to get it perfectly mixed here. We're just trying to get rid of any of the big clumps. Just like this. Yeah, just like that. Now, once we get that all put together, now we're going to just kind of reverse the process. And we're going to put this mixture right into our mixing bowl. Now you notice I made a mess on the counter again, but that's alright because it cleans up. Didn't spill a whole lot of it. And now once again we're just really going to get this all folded in together. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. About like that. Pretty much done. And now we're just going to pour this mixture right into our pie crust. Square loose, just like that. And voila! Hey, look, you have yourself a beautiful cheater's pie right here in front of us. We just want to chill this out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just pop this lid back on in the reverse order. And we're going to put this in the refrigerator to chill out. And then we will get back to making our eggnog pie. Okay, so we have had our pie crust in the oven for about 15 minutes at 350. And so it is just where we want it. And we're going to let this cool off while we prepare the filling. So we're going to use our mixer again. This time we're going to use the paddle instead of the whisk. Get this fixed in there. And so we're going to start off with some softened cream cheese. This is just one 8-ounce block. Let's see how easy this bad boy is to get opened up in here. Down in there. Let's go ahead and scrape this off a little bit, as we might need some of that that's left on the wrapper. Just like that. Scrape it off like that. Okay. I'm going to put that in there. And we're just going to start to slowly blend that up. Now, in here, I have a 1/4 cup of white sugar, a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And so we're going to add this to our cream cheese. Just let that keep going. Turn it up just one notch here. Okay. To that, we're going to add some spices. So in here we have about a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and we're going to add this all right in here. Just like that. There's one other spice. What was the other spice? I have it right back here. Cloves, yeah. 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves. A little less cloves than the other. Okay, so now, here's the thing. We're now going to add some vanilla. This is about a teaspoon of vanilla. That's real Mexican vanilla. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to shut that off. We're going to scrape down our sides a little bit here. So let's pop this up. And we just have some of the stuff that we've been incorporating in there. Are kind of still stuck to the side. And so this is a good opportunity just to put all that stuff back down in there so we can get going. Put that back on. Start that back up a little bit. Whoa, that tastes good. Now, we're going to start adding some eggs. I have 3 eggs. So there's one. It's really dangerous, right? Because if I get any shells in here, it'll be hard to get them out. But I have a great deal of confidence in my ability to crack eggs. I actually, when I was in college, I worked at McDonald's during the morning shift. And so I have cracked, well, let's just say, a lot of eggs in my lifetime. I might say I was a professional egg cracker. I'll turn that up a little bit more and get that really going. Okay, so got that going. Got that whipping in there really good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it down. What I have here is 3 tablespoons of spiced rum. Now, if you don't want to use alcohol, well, first off, let me say this. Because we're baking this, the alcohol is pretty much all going to cook off of this. So we're not going to have alcohol really remaining in the pie. But if for whatever reason you don't want to use alcohol, that's fine. You can use rum extract, which has no alcohol in it. Or, if you don't even want to use that, you don't even want the flavor in there, you can use 3 tablespoons of apple juice. And it's going to give you a little bit of a similar profile. And so, to all that, we're going to add 1.5 cups, no, just 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. I just want to get that all nice and incorporated. Let's do it one big fast go around. Just like that. Now, we're just going to shake that off a little bit. Go ahead and just kind of make sure everything is off of the edges. So we're just going to give it another mix with our little spatula here. Just like that. Now we're going to pull this up over here. And we're just going to carefully dump this mixture into our pie crust. And it's going to be pretty liquid, but that's all right. That's the way it's supposed to be. So don't panic. Now, you want to use, by the way, if you want to get all of this goodness in here, you need to use a deep pie pan, because if you use a shallow one, you're not going to have as much. You're going to have to hold some out. So if you're using a shallow one for whatever reason, let's say you're using a store-bought crust, it's going to be more shallow than this pie pan. And so just be careful you're not kind of running it over the edge. And so, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, see if this cooled off enough, it is. I'm just going to take and transfer this onto this. Oh, it's still pretty hot. I've changed my mind, it's still pretty warm. I mean, it's cool enough to touch, but I'm afraid when I pick it up, it isn't going to fare well. So if I was smart, I would have transferred this over to this pan over here before I put the filling in there, but I didn't. Now the reason we want it on this baking sheet is because there is the possibility that some of this could bubble over, and we don't want it down in our oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to cook this for about 40 to 45 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the oven. I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to spin it, so make sure it gets a nice, even cook on all sides, because most ovens don't cook exactly even. So I'll turn it at 20 minutes, and then we'll go for another 20 minutes and see how it is. And so what we're looking for is the edges should be starting to pull away from the crust. And it should still jiggle a little bit in the middle. It's not going to be completely solid. So don't be afraid if it looks a little bit too jiggly. Really what you're looking for is if it's starting to pull away on the edges, you're pretty much done. But it should take about a total of 45 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and get this in our oven. Okay, we've been in there for about 42 minutes, and we're going to pull it out and see what it looks like. So as you can see, just what we were talking about, it's starting to pull away from the edges, and it is still a little bit jiggly in the middle, and that is just what we were looking for. Let me go ahead and grab my other glove over here. Because before we can really eat this, we're going to have to let it cool off. So we're going to set it here for a little while. We're going to let this cool off. Actually, I'm going to let it cool off out here for probably about half hour. Then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for another half hour. So I'm going to come back to you about an hour, and we'll see what this pie and the cheater's pie tastes like. So we'll see you in about an hour. Okay, so we have both of our pies out and ready to go. So I'm just going to cut me a slice of both of these and put them on the plate and give them a try. So let's start with this beautiful eggnog pie right here. Let's see if I can get it out of here without it breaking apart. The first one is always the hardest to get out. It didn't come out too bad though. Let's just get the rest of that up there. There we go. Now I'm just gonna clean that off a little bit right there. And let's try this one. Just like that. And there we go. There we go. Okay. Get us a fork out here. There we go. Okay, so let's try this eggnog pie first. So let's just... Okay. I mean, this is delicious. I mean, realistically, it could have sat in the refrigerator longer, but I was ready to give this a try. But this tastes delicious. And it does taste like eggnog. Remarkably, even though there's no eggnog in it, it has all the spices and everything. And it doesn't really have the overwhelming taste of rum in there, but that spiced rum and those spices in there really add to the flavor. The homemade crust is delicious. I mean, that is just the crust with the eggnog pie is so good. I mean, this is something that, if you take this to a family dinner, there's a good chance that it's the only thing you're going to be able to take to family dinners from then on, because everyone's going to ask you, hey, would you please bring that eggnog pie with you? So good, so good. Now let's try the cheater's pie. This is a lemon pie. Let's give it a try. Oh, wow. I mean, that has just the right blend of tart to sweet in it. That crust, this pecan crust, is really sets off the flavors of the lemon custard. You could easily put some whipped topping on either one of those. I mean, if you're going to do the cheaty one, just make some extra of the whipped topping that we made and put that on top of there. You could put a homemade whipped topping on here, or you could just use the store-bought stuff. Either way, hey, both of these are delicious pieces of pie. And I'm going to tell you what, if you take this to your family dinner this holiday season, don't plan on bringing any home, because everyone is going to want to eat it up. Hey, I tried it. You should too.